Hello, Trinidad and Tobago and the wider world, all of those following us on the Plain Talk series. Today, we're joined by naturopathic Dr. Philip Franco. Good day, Philip.
Hello, everybody.
Political scientist Dr. Kirk Megu.
Hello.
And on the phone, Paul Alexander, PhD, epidemiologist.
Hello, Philip.
Paul, so do you use the doctor designation?
If you want, but we don't need to do that.
He's my brother, so that's the informalness of the conversation, right? But this is a serious conversation. I want to jump right in and I want to put on the table, and I have people, the three people on this panel today come to the conversation from different sides of the animal. Now, I am overtly political when I am dealing with issues, but political from a position of politics runs the world. Politics runs your country. It is politics that you turn to make your decisions, right? So I'm looking at it from that point of view. We have a pandemic running wild in the world now, coronavirus. As of this moment, we have 854,307 cases out of the 7.7 billion people on the planet. 42,000 people have died, 176,906 have recovered, and so the rest of that math is our active cases. For our argument, for our position, for this conversation, Trinidad and Tobago has 87 cases, 3 deaths. We got our first case on March the 11th. Paul Alexander, I'm going to ask you this question before I go to anybody else on the panel, because we have enough facts and data now available to know, and I want you to tell me if I'm correct in saying that everybody could get coronavirus on the planet. A very small number will get coronavirus as a serious issue, and an even smaller number could die.
Exactly how you just said it, theoretically. Because as a coronavirus, let's say generally, I'll answer it this way. The world had 2 very serious coronaviruses in the past, very lethal. One was SARS-1, 2000 to 2003, and one was the MERS virus that hit the Middle East more recently. Those were lethal with over 10% mortality rates. But we generally have coronaviruses running through the population. About four of them generally, year over year, as part of our yearly influenza season, captured within seasonal influenza. So the issue is, you could get coronavirus normally, a coronavirus, and it deals with you, and you deal with it as a normal little cold, and you may not even know you had it. A coronavirus, one of those, and it get captured in those numbers. So let's say we use the United States to really understand the situation. The United States loses 50,000 people a year from normal, roughly between 40 to 60,000, but we say 50, every year from seasonal influenza. So that we talk about those 4 coronaviruses that normally moving through the situation, the influenza, etc. So the issue is, if we want testing for this now, if we want looking for this now, to be quite honest with you, this will operate like a normal, how should I say it, like normal influenza, and the deaths, etc. will be captured with that season. And this is the challenge right now, because the question is the reaction overblown? Is the reaction right? And the most important question is, are the deaths that being reported, is it due to COVID, or is it happening with COVID? And that's the important distinction, because we have people who who, for all intents and purposes, and this is a fact, and this is what the medical community is struggling with, how to really approach this, is this. Once you are of a certain age and we get older, we are vulnerable. And once you're older, over 80, with secondary conditions, there's a strong chance that you are going to pass away other than COVID. And you see, that's the challenge. A lot of the people in the United States and a lot of people globally get captured as they died of COVID. But the issue is absent. Even with COVID in the mix, they were gravely ill people to begin with. So this has become such a, I'm trying to we could start talking and the conversation would never end. You said you operate in a political environment. This has become a very political issue. This is not just a medical issue. This is a political issue now, and the challenge is that it's a political issue.
Why is it such a political issue now?
Because of one fundamental issue. The issue is that all governments across the world, from the Caribbean island governments to the first world nation governments, have failed. And why they failed is, over the last decades, they were not paying attention to the social demographic changes in their societies. Because governments just have nice, and I'm not talking about Trinidad, I live overseas, but I'm a Trinidadian, so I'm talking as a global citizen here. Government, people who in government, they get nice salaries, they have their per diems, they have very stable jobs, they don't have to worry about the future. They don't really care once they get in their nice cushy jobs, what they really were employed to do. So, using this statement, while you were sleeping, your population was eating. Things needed to be done. You needed to plan, and it is your job. And this is the problem I have with the United States, with Canada, with every country.
With Trinidad and Tobago.
The people not turning to the minister and to the prime minister and to whoever and say that simple thing. You turning around like us in Canada or United States, and you asking us to self-quarantine and to do this and to do that, when this entire failure is due to you. You need to ask us to cooperate, because it is totally your doing, because you did not do what this is your job. You the Minister of Health, you the Ministry of Health, you all of the people in public health. You need to know exactly what's going on, and you need to have all the planning. You needed all the beds. And I'll tell you as bluntly, when this started in Italy, what the news didn't tell you is they rushed out and said, well, so many people died in Italy and spooked the entire world. But what they also didn't tell you, and this is the politics, is this. A, the average age of the person who died and who have died in Italy is 82. They didn't also tell you that the people who died in Italy at 82 all had at least 3 grave underlying clinical conditions that would have killed them absent of COVID. They didn't also tell you that Italians are among the highest smokers in the world. They didn't also tell you in the same news broadcast that Italians have the highest rate of COPD in the world. They didn't also tell you that Italians have a of the beds in hospitals than the United States or Canada has.
No, because they tell you that, because they're telling you that Italy has the second best health sector in the world. How could those coincidences? Second best public health in the world.
That's bull. Italy has one of the worst public health systems in the world.
Well, okay.
I just told it has a quarter of the beds. That means with any shift in surge capacity, any demand, Italy would have never been able to cope. If Italy got one bad seasonal influenza system, the whole healthcare system would have collapsed. And it happened year over year. It's strained every year. But what happened here is, this is a respiratory illness that causes a certain breathing difficulty in the elderly, particularly when you get afflicted. They just didn't have the right number of ventilators in place. And that's the issue. You know, they have a saying, is the economy stupid? Well, for this whole issue, is the ventilator stupid? If you don't have them, people are going to die.
Okay.
And people are going to die are old people.
Case closed, right? So I want to bring the other panelists in because they're gonna want to add to this, and they're gonna ask. They're gonna. You hear me still, Paul? Paul, you hear me, right? Paul, the challenge of running multiple connections at the same time. Stand by, guys. Paul, you hear me? Paul, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to bring the other panelists in because they're going to want to add to the conversation, and they're going to probably have questions to ask you too. So I'm gonna send it across to Kirk Megu only because I want to ask him, Kirk, what Paul just said. Now, you, I, and Philip Franco have been asking these same questions. Is this a massive overcorrection? And are we in our overcorrection damaging the country?
Well, yeah, I think so, but we need to put it in a larger global context. This is not just a response of our government. This is actually something that the Bill Gates Foundation's Johns Hopkins University and the World Economic Forum have been rehearsing for the past 10 years. They call it Event 201, and you could look it up on the internet, on Google right now. And the last event they had was in October 2019, just before this came out. And basically, and what they modeled for was a coronavirus respiratory pandemic, what a coordinated global response should be. And as I said, you could look it up and see the information they themselves put out, not just what other people are talking about. And it was a whole range of things from full martial law to shutting down the economy.
Confirmation bias? Is that what you're saying this is?
There are various theories that you can say. You can say it's a conspiracy that they did this, that they were planning this, or you can say they were extremely, had extreme foresight, right? So whichever one you want to go for, you can choose for yourself where you want to go. But the response has been planned for a very long time. That's for sure, and it includes, shutting down the world economy, getting public-private partnerships, and they've been testing different scenarios, right? So, and in fact, the Johns Hopkins Center that is one of the three major partners of this is funded by Bloomberg himself, right? So, and it says right there, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Center. So this is something that is, it's like a live drill, and in fact, it is something Mike Pompeo said, that this was a live drill in his one of his early addresses. So the thing is that this is beyond just Trinidad and Tobago, because why is almost every country having the exact same response? Because it's coordinated. What's interesting is the outliers: Mexico, Japan, Brazil,
Singapore.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to. People are going to ask. What's the motive behind this?
Yeah. Well, before we look at the motive, which we can only guess at, and we could be wrong, but let's look at what some of the consequences would be from these measures. By closing down the world economy like this, by telling people to self-quarantine and stay home, how many, and having this panic effect on the stock markets, how many people's retirement savings are wiped away? Their investments gone. The small businesses will be crushed. Whatever salaries and savings they have will be depleted. Right? How many people are going to be economically able to survive this? People are talking 3 months up to September, right? And people like to say this is a choice. Or you only think about money. It's not just thinking about money, because not having enough money to pay for your normal health services will kill far more people than the coronavirus will. And this whole thing of spreading fear, which that is a totally, you could blame that on the international media, not just the local media. It's the international media that has been pushing this. And then on social media, you have people spreading things like people dropping in the streets in Wuhan, like this is some zombie apocalypse. People have been conditioned by 10 years of zombie movies and apocalypse movies to believe that what is happening is a zombie apocalypse. We see the deserted streets in Rome, in New York, and it's just like a movie we saw. Right? And so we expect zombies to come out, and we expect the worst. And so in this atmosphere of fear, it's like they're taking away our civil liberties. We don't care. It's like they're pushing us as far as we can take. And I don't think the world will be able to take it for long. I think after a month, when people, not able to pay their rents, their salaries, people losing, having an economically unstable future, they're going to push back. They're going to see that Boris Johnson hasn't died, that Idris Elba hasn't died, that Justin Trudeau hasn't died, that all these famous people that are coming out and saying they have it, and listening to some people's accounts, like you can already see on Twitter, okay, you had a bad flu for 2 days, you came out of the hospital, thank God. Okay, well, that's it? Well, really, is this worth it? It just seems to me like it's a control exercise. Can we turn the world economy on and off at will? How far can we take away people's civil liberties? How far can we push people before we get a pushback? This is what seems is happening.
I hear everything you're saying. I want to pick it apart quickly, but I want to bring Philip Franco in so he can weigh in on what's going on, and we come back to all of these and interact. Mr. Franco, from your perspective.
Yes. So we have the elderly being affected. And nobody's asking why. We're just assuming that the elderly are weak, and because of that they are succumbing. But what happened was 2 weeks ago, I heard the French Minister of Health state that one has to be careful with ibuprofen. Ibuprofen is an anti-inflammatory. Advil, Motrin, something that apparently people take every day, almost like a candy. And something clicked. And as a naturopath, we understand that the immune response, part of that immune response is an inflammatory response. When we treat infectious illnesses, we don't subdue a fever. We never do that. That's not in our training. It's almost like the old-time way where the grandmothers and so used to do it, where you promote the fever. Because the fever is the immune response in the body's metabolism is being increased when the body is trying to recognize the foreign matter, the antigen, and trying to make antibodies to combat those pathogens. So a fever is just a symptom of the body fighting the infection. And in naturopathic medicine, we promote the fever. We what we call manage the fever. We give teas, herbal teas that promote sweating and increased heat. We put people to bed and cover to keep warm. At the same time, we keep the head cool, especially in children who can go into convulsions without us realizing. The adult might feel a bit of something coming on and want that head cool, but the child may not be able to tell you. So this clicked with me, and I started to do some research. And what I found was that there are many studies that show that not only ibuprofen, but all anti-inflammatories, even Tylenol and Panadol, all the acetaminophen, aspirin including, all the steroidal drugs, right? Depress the immune system. I have all the studies. In fact, I've just finished a letter to the Prime Minister and putting my hypothesis to him, right? Because he's in charge here and he needs to do something and he can do something differently. We don't have to follow. We don't have to follow. We always follow him, right? We can rise up and rise beyond that, right? So even in the Spanish flu of 1918, I have found that the record shows that the persons that were susceptible to the complications of the Spanish flu were the persons that they treated with aspirin. Now, at that time, aspirin was the only anti-inflammatory available. And that too caused people to succumb, right? So what it is that the sick care system that is established in all countries of the world, provided for by Big Pharma, who is in bed with the governments and provide for this, right? The sick care system treats chronic diseases as if they are incurable. Most people are told when they come with high blood pressure or arthritis or diabetes that here, take this medicine and you have to take it until you die. So you resign to the fact that this disease is incurable. That has many ramifications, right? Because it leads them to think, well, I cannot be cured, and therefore I will just take this for the rest of my life. Then you get another chronic disease, either because of the side effects of that drug or because of something as lifestyle thing. There's no application of teaching people about health. Right now, we're looking for a vaccine. I want to know, and I want somebody to answer this question for me. If you take an unhealthy person and you plus a vaccine onto that person, what is the outcome? What does that equal to? You take an unhealthy person plus a vaccine, what do you get? Is that something we're looking for? Tell me what it is, right? We should be working on health, right? And the problem is that the majority of the elderly persons are on painkillers, anti-inflammatories, and other drugs. Other drugs are also implicated in this, yes?
Philip, somebody said, I heard a quotation years ago that if aspirin was not already approved by the FDA, it couldn't be approved now under the rules and regulations that they operate under. That aspirin is that bad.
Well, yes, there's a lot of discourses. So should somebody actually be taking aspirin on a daily basis to prevent cardiovascular disease? So there are many physicians that are contemplating that.
Okay, but we're going to have to come back to that avenue of the conversation as the days go by. I want to put a cat among the pigeons, right? And I just want to put some numbers because I keep saying I am only interested in what the data shows. And the data tells me that China has a population of 1.5 billion people. 1.5 billion people had coronavirus COVID-19 in their country for 4 months. Before the rest of the world knew about it. There were no masks, no sanitizing, no gloves, no social isolation and social distancing. And China only got 81,518 cases. If coronavirus, this is my question, if coronavirus is as infectious and as contagious as they say it is, why didn't China, by the time we found out about it, in a country that has 1.5 billion, 1,500 million people, why aren't their numbers in the hundreds of thousands, if not?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You know, and I want to put this question in the context of something Philip said, which is very important, which goes beyond the specific issue he was talking about, which I'm not qualified in talking about those aspects of health, although I have my own views, and I am more into healthcare than sick care. But certainly what he said was, which is so important, is that we fail to think for ourselves, right? So instead we're following fashion. We're waiting till the Americans have an answer before we have an answer. We're waiting for them to diagnose something before we think it's a problem. And then also, if they wrongly diagnose something, we're going to take that wrong diagnosis, right? We don't have the confidence to assess a problem ourselves and at least work towards a solution. I'm not saying we can solve everything for ourselves. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But where do all these doctors in these first world countries come from? Paul Alexander, for example, comes from Trinidad, right? So they come from India. They come from these countries.
You're a scientist. I'm asking you.
Yes.
Italy's situation, we know Italy's situation was exacerbated by a lot of other underlying and additional factors, because the numbers and the data that are coming in from around the world doesn't hold up with the madness of the panic and the shutdown of the world that we're doing. Trinidadians are arguing with me when I raise this point and begging for a state of emergency. Trinidadians are almost ready to dig a hole and climb into the hole. How do we get to here when the numbers themselves say that is not so?
Exactly. I know, because I was looking at the numbers, and I posted it up previously about, like, say, numbers of how many people die from flu every year, right? So in 2017, the numbers I have from influenza and pneumonia, 383 persons per year, which is more than one person per day, right? And then 2,436 people die per year from coronary heart disease, over 2,000 from diabetes. Yes, in Trinidad. These are Trinidad figures, right?
So that they know, the audience knows.
Yeah, and so it's because this is the first time people are looking at demographic data, right? I mean, I've been looking at it for a long time, so I know that every day there's a number of deaths and suicides. Like, for instance, we talk about the murder rate a lot. We don't talk about the suicide rate a lot. And there's a huge suicide rate we have, and all sorts of things.
What about the 2,700 people who have died today from hunger? That's the most preventable thing of all.
That's right. Yes, So we have all these infectious diseases, including tuberculosis and things like that, or other causes of death, whether it be violence, whether it be poverty, whether it be road accidents, and things like that, which have a huge toll.
Let Paul want to say something on that question that I asked about the numbers. Paul.
Okay. Philip, it's all about the data. So let me answer something. Let me say something here. And the data, don't care how you spin it, how you look at it, does not support any of what they're doing here. So let me say this. If you, Philip, went to the doctor one day and say, you know what, I'm 40 years old, whatever, joking, and you say, all my life since a little baby, a little boy growing up in Trinidad, I've been exposed to the air outside, playing, going to school, I'm a big adult today. Test my blood. Invent every possible test you could find, and test my blood for everything you could find. What I'm trying to tell you, they will probably find 500,000 different infections in your blood. The UR antibodies to every human being. When you walk outside and jump in your car right now, you're going to bump up into a virus. It's circulating. You didn't know what's there. Your body will build immunities. Boom, case over. You have it your whole life. You never tested for it. You don't even know it exists. Because you have a test for it. It's benign. It's not doing you anything. What has happened here is, if we didn't look at this because of what took place in Wuhan, and force the mortality in Italy, where you cannot extrapolate that case mix to the United States or to Canada, where we don't have the same underlying terrible conditions of... Listen, Italy have the highest elderly... I want you to listen to my statement. Italy has the highest elderly population across Europe. The news didn't tell you that. The news didn't tell you that most of the people who died were old people that were gravely ill. The news lied. So I'm talking as a lay person, as a scientist too, that I'm very angry what has happened here. So I'm telling you as it is. What has happened in Wuhan and what happened in Italy is not what was happening in the rest of the world. And now we invent tests for this thing. So every time you hear the news, breaking news, 3 other people test positive. Well, who cares? Because they're testing for it now. They have estimates about 80 or 90% of the population already immune to this. Bump up against it already, got it, have antibodies already. 90% of people who have this have mild symptoms. You will not present to a medical establishment. You will never know you had it. The 10% who go to the hospital because of symptoms, half of that 10% will probably need to go into an ICU. And then half of that will probably need mechanical ventilation or ECMO. That is the 80 and 90-year-old people we're talking about with underlying grave conditions. And anytime you throw up to me, oh, well, we just found out this young person got it, I will argue with you until you show me otherwise that person had underlying medical conditions. And often, drip by drip, you get to find out that person was gravely ill. He might have been a young person. And another thing, life is just that way. This year in the seasonal influenza in Trinidad, they're going to have a couple of 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds that will get it, seasonal influenza, they get it cold and they'll die. That is life. That's just the way life and things shake out. So this whole thing is just so disastrous now because somebody on this call, one of the guys, I can't remember which one, just said something that is so true. Let me tell you something. The implications socioeconomically of what they're doing now, the suicides, the hangings, the depression, the loss of the jobs, companies, do you know how many thousands of companies going to fold? The implications of this is far outreaching than what they're showing us COVID is doing. Listen to me, Philip, it's a simple fact. The data says one thing glaringly. This is a respiratory virus. Okay, that means it impacts the respiratory system. Older people have lived a beautiful long life, but the respiratory system does not function like when you were young. This is a respiratory virus. If they have underlying medical conditions, that is a hot mess for this virus. In that environment, this virus plays nice. That is the person we should have come forward and say, you know what, population, here's the key. We have seasonal influenza again flowing through here. Amongst it, we have this new virus just labeled called COVID. We should have kept its real name, which is SARS-2, which is a virus to the SARS influenza virus. But we changed the name to COVID. We separate that for now. I'm just thinking of COVID, it running through the society. You know what? You see the elderly among us, the ones 80 and above, granny and grandpa with their little conditions, we need to be careful with them. A little more hygiene, keep them away a little bit. Rest of society, behave yourself. You know what I mean? Develop your herd immunity and you move on with life. The problem is when granny and grandpa bump up against this, get their breathing difficulty, and granny and grandpa go to the hospital, they don't have beds for granny and grandpa. And when they do get a bed, they don't have a ventilator. And 1 hour, not breathing, you will die. And that is what all these politicians know. Somebody went to
let me give you some numbers.
Playing math all them years and studying your bank account. Politicians in Canada, in the United States, all the Congress people in Sweden, wherever in the world. While you was doing that, your population was aging. So if we do have something like a respiratory virus, it will be harder for the old people. Just harder for them. You need a plan.
Let me put some numbers into the conversation, right? Italy's population is 60.48 million people. 20 million of that 60 million, a third of the population are above the age of 60. But according to the Italian Institute for Health, the causes of premature death in Italy, the number one is ischemic heart disease. Number two is lung cancer.
You know what I would like to just add here, and maybe Paul will be able to answer the question. One of the things is that I wonder, and I heard Peter Hitchens talk about this in the UK. I wonder if the death rate has substantially changed in Italy, or is it we are reclassifying deaths? You understand? So people are saying that they are now dying of COVID-19, which Paul makes a great point that they renamed it. It sounds like an asteroid, right? It sounds like something from outer space. Instead of saying SARS-2, where we'd be familiar with it, it would sound not so scary. This is all part of the fear-mongering that is purposely built into this. But yeah, the death rate may not be that different. And another point I wanted to expand, I think Paul made a very good point too, about the politicians not doing their job. And what I would put into that, not doing their job in terms of the globalization thing that has been happening for the past 20 years, also required increased public sanitation and health measures. So when we see in Chaguanas, where I am, and I think the Mayor Vandana Mohit is doing an excellent job of spraying down the market and the roads, but this should be a normal thing, like you see in Singapore, like you see in Hong Kong, like you see in East Asia. They are very, very sanitary. When you go to Singapore, I feel I could lick the road and be totally clean. That's how they're a bit OCD, but the sanitary thing, which should have been part of globalization, right? Because people predicted this decades ago that with increased globalization and travel, there would be increased pandemic. So so there's that area of responsibility. I agree with,
Look, I need to pin this down though, because Paul is saying something and the numbers are saying something, and I want you to understand here. Number one is ischemic heart disease. Number 4 is lung cancer. Number 5 is chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. These are the leading causes of death in Italy. That means you're dealing with a country that is naturally predisposed to respiratory collapse. Paul, tell me if I'm correct.
You're very correct. And they have among the highest influenza year over year. And critically, Philip, these are the two things that went wrong that the news didn't explain. Things that went wrong is when people first started to get this respiratory illness, granny and grandpa in Italy, so many people over 80, everybody rushed. Their uncle and their aunt and their brother and sister were just my little cause. Well, I have the same thing. So everybody pull up in the hospitals in Italy. Overwhelming hospitals with mild or non-COVID cases. By the time you admit them, you check them out, and you discharge them. When granny and grandpa 85 pulling up with the 3 underlying conditions, aspirin for bread, you taking up the beds that we already know Italy have a quarter of the beds per capita the United States have. It is a failed medical system there. Failed. And you taking up the beds. So that's why granny and grandpa died in so many numbers. They died in the corridor waiting to get on a bed and get on a ventilator that they didn't have. So they drowned. This disease drowns you. Your lungs fill with fluid. You need to get on a ventilator. So what governments needed to do was to get up their ass and get the right number of ventilators. So let me put in numbers there. The United States right now has 120,000 ventilators. 120,000. The country has about 25 million people over 80. Of that 25 million, about 12 million over 80 have multiple comorbid conditions. That 12 million people across America are all right candidates for the aggressive, severe form of COVID that could kill. That is what the government understands. All of what they're doing today is only to prevent that 12 million from dying.
So you're going to lock down 400 million people to protect
Yes.
12 million people.
Yeah, well,
And the numbers say,
your family,
No, no.
your family, they're wrong-sided in what they're doing. But that in their mind, they're panicking, they're scared.
all right, but let's say
They're
this.
scared.
No, but let's say this. The numbers also say that in that demographic, even if 10% of that 12 million, which is 1.2 million, get it, 10% may die, 10% may succumb, 120,000. The rest will get it as severe as they get it and will recover.
Yeah, but you have to project a theoretical risk that they all gonna get the severe.
I have no problem with that, but you cannot ruin an economy and a democracy on those numbers. Those numbers are not enough.
No,
Wait,
question. They look at number of ventilators. They get scared shitless. So they decided this is the only way because they figuring if that happened, how it could happen at my watch. So let me ask you a basic question. I've been there for a while. Just tell me so I can work it out in my head. The population of Trinidad is 1.4 million. How many do you think are over 75, which is the high risk group? And how many of them do you think you could speculate have multiple underlying grave conditions? Just give me a number.
I want to tell you this. Of
100,000.
Take this as your number.
100,000.
Take this as your number. Trinidad and Tobago had 50,000 people come into the country at the height of the pandemic. After that, we brought a further 20,000 people into the country.
Well,
Hear this. We have now our official number for coronavirus. I think the actual number is 87. But 50 people of that 87 left Trinidad and Tobago in a coronavirus infected situation among themselves, got onto a cruise and went at sea for 8 days and incubated and came back and tested positive. We do not have the kind of numbers that should have panicked the world, and even so, our existing numbers is 2 per million. 2 per million. 2 per million with that crazy situation of a cruise ship that took people who were exposed to coronavirus, put them in a sealed environment, and sent them out for 8 days to party. So that is like, what do you not do? Is that we did. But when you look at the actual numbers that we're supposed to have, which is less than 30 cases, and I'm saying this to all three of you, because I've been cussing the government for the 50,000 people that came here for Carnival. And I've been cussing the government for you opening the door and letting 20,000 people come in here after you knew this took place in March. But it still didn't spike the numbers.
Yeah. You know, this is one of the things I think that's important for us in Trinidad, because maybe there might be people listening to us who said, oh, you know, these people, they want to kill us. They don't understand how crazy this thing is. And I know there's this irrational fear gripping everybody. But that's the point. I think, you know, what we're trying to do here is to stop the fear, because fear is going to kill us more than the virus itself, or it's going to exacerbate. We have to be rational about this. That's why we need to look at the numbers, and then we need to have a rational response. But that's not what we're doing.
David Anthony Shepard just added, Kirk, that the 3 people who died in Trinidad and Tobago all were over 70.
Correct.
Exactly what I'm saying.
That's right. And I think at least one was a foreigner who came, but he's being counted as a Trini. I think he was. Yeah.
He's a Trini, lives in New York. And he was here
Correct.
from February. Yes. And he went to the hospital on March 13th. We have all his details, even though the Ministry of Health not given it us. The question then, and I need to ask this question.
But look at this. If we remove that one person, we remove 1/3 of all our deaths. You understand? So it's a significant detail.
Kirk, Paul want to say something?
You can't, look, you can't fool around with this. Let's say it this way. This is a respiratory virus that have a bite. The problem is, if you have X number of ventilators in Trinidad, let's say you have 100. I just
It's
playing around with
16. It's 16 operational. That's how much we have. And that is the issue, eh? But yeah, it's 16.
So you have 16 ventilators, let's say 20, okay? And let's say of the population of Trinidad and Tobago, 100,000 of them, 100,000 over 75 and have some kind of underlying condition like cardiovascular disease, being treated for some aggressive form of diabetes, pancreatitis, something that are ongoing. Those are the people that are at risk. They're not necessarily going to die. They're just at risk if they bump up against this virus and they do not get the necessary help they need. The necessary help is this. When an elderly person with underlying medical condition, there's a high possibility that they are going to develop an aggressive form of acute respiratory distress, pneumonia. They're going to need mechanical ventilation. It's a simple issue. If they could get access to the mechanical ventilation, they will likely make it. That's why Trump and they have 500,000 mechanical ventilators produced right as we speak, because they understood the 10 million at risk in America, theoretically, they only have 100,000 ventilators for 10 million people. So they need many ventilators. Trinidad, for those elderly people, if you do not stop the spread to them, those people are at risk. It's a simple issue. How to stop the spread? This is a very conversation should only be. How do you stop the spread in a country to your elderly at-risk population or those compromised? How? Do you lock the country down? Do you put everybody on quarantine, etc., etc.?
That's what they did now. That is not the sensible thing to do. If you know the demographic that is at risk, lock down the demographic that is at risk.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
Now it's too late. Because what Canada, the United States, all these countries are doing, because they're...
It's not too late. I beg to totally differ. It is...
These people in government got elected. They get nice salaries. All their family get big jobs. They don't want to get on their watch.
Yeah, I know. It's difficult. It's difficult.
About politics. It has debts involved. But they have now taken it into a political place and they fool around with our lives. Because now, your panel said some right things there. The right things is this. The consequences of bringing an economy to a standstill and doing all of these things that they're doing now will destroy the economy and destroy people's lives. They will have implications far-reaching than COVID. And I know Granny and Grandpa, not important. My parents, very important. But they must have different ways to safeguard them. But they need it to come to the public. And it's simple.
I want to ask you a question. Because what they're doing now, all I am proposing is do exactly what you're doing now for everybody above 60. Anybody that has asthma, anybody that has a pre-existing condition, underlying, anybody that's compromised, anybody that has COPD, bronchitis, asthma, anybody predisposed to this, guide them to isolate themselves, put things in place to help them. Trinidad has already lost about $10 billion because of this overreaction, this overcorrection, and Trinidadians, one to the next. I have a good friend, Rudy Curry. Rudy is an intelligent, critical thinker. I go to Rudy's wall when something happens in Trinidad and Tobago just to see what Rudy's take on it is. And Rudy told me last night that he's disappointed in my position on COVID-19. And I know Rudy is speaking from two things, a lack of information and from pure fear. I remember I read to Trinidad and Tobago on a live video. I read from a doctor in a Newsweek article before March 16th, before the government came out to talk about social isolation and lock yourself down. I was the biggest proponent for that. Nail the door shut. because this person wrote an article in a Newsweek magazine that made it sound like it was a 50-50 that you would get it and a 50-50 that it would damage you for life, regardless of who you are. We've since learned that the average person with a healthy immune system will get coronavirus COVID-19 and may not even know, and it will
Yeah.
work to this.
Yes, you know, so what I'm saying is, you see, what's happening here is a combination of some of the worst aspects, which is going to be terrible for our society going forward, because the consequences are going to be further extreme income equality, not only here but throughout the whole world. The richer, the rich 1% or 0.5% will become even richer. The many middle class will fall into the lower class. And all this is being driven by the worst aspects of society. Fear, as you mentioned. Ignorance, as you also mentioned. Our lack of, our sickness, and lack of health, which Phillips talks about. And all these things combine to make a population that will not be rational, that will just listen out of fear to whatever authorities say, that will be controlled, that will be a dystopia. It's not the type of society where that we should want, which is one that can take a look at its problems, assess it rationally, attack it boldly and forthrightly with our own minds, and move forward. But instead, this is bringing out the worst of every aspect, and it will have a terrible knock-on effect.
Number one,
Philip? Yeah, I want to make 2 points here. So the irony here is that, as we say, what's going to happen? The governments of the world are going to be bankrupt, borrowing money. I understand the government here is borrowing money from our banks. Whose money is that? That's our money. And so when we go to get our money, where is it going to be, right? So they're bankrupting all the governments because of their stupid tactics here. And who is going to come out on top? Well, it's the very pharmaceutical companies that have caused this in the first place, right? Being in bed with the governments and giving bad medicine, because, none, not one pharmaceutical medicine, not one pharmaceutical product has any healing potential. None, not one. They all are symptomatic medicines, right? And they do more damage than anything else because they have side effects. Originally, they were taken from herbs. And what they did was they were isolated compounds that they felt was the active ingredients in the herbs, and they were able to patent it, as in the case with aspirin. It was a herb called willow bark. And the active ingredient that they thought was the most active was salicylic acid. The same thing is happening with this hydrochloroquine. It's coming from the cinchona plant, right, which was an anti-malaria plant. They used the plant as an anti-malaria plant. Then they took out the quinine from it because they could patent it. And that's the problem, that they're not using the plants because they can't patent it, so they don't have that type of money that they can make from it. Right? But they're the ones that are going to be on top, because they're the ones going to sell the ventilators, and having ventilators or not having ventilators is not the problem, right? And I would like to see the data on what the recovery rate is somebody into the hospital when they are already in severe mode going into critical. Because right now when people call up, in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't know how it is elsewhere, and they call up and they say, look, I have a cough, and I can't breathe, and I have a headache. They say, well, all right, you might have it, but call us back when it gets worse, right? In naturopathic medicine, the most important thing is to go in early before it gets into the bloodstream and becomes systemic, before it starts to attack the tissue, right? That's what we do. We have antivirals, we have antibacterials, we have the whole world and plant kingdom before us, right? They don't have any good antivirals. The only antiviral they had is the Tamiflu. And they made that from a plant called aniseed, right? And when they started to make that a few years ago, I couldn't even get the aniseed because they bought up all the fields of aniseed, and we couldn't get the aniseed to make the Tamiflu. That gentleman that came from New York and died, right? When I saw the list, what they gave him, this man was in respiratory distress, right? Hanging on for his life. They gave him two antibiotics. Two antibiotics I never heard of before. I had to look it up. Very powerful antibiotics and the Tamiflu, right? You're not trying to help that guy. You're trying to kill him. That's probably what killed him. And they probably gave him something to take down his fever too, and stop the immune system from working, right? So that is the whole irony of the situation, is the pharmaceutical companies are going to come up with the vaccine now and sell it to all the governments of the world who borrowing money to buy it, right? To go and mandatory vaccine every living human being on the face of this earth, right? They have plans to do it, and how they're going to lock down, and you cannot travel. And when I say travel, I don't mean in an airplane. I mean travel on the streets unless you have your vaccination pass. I've seen a whole video on it. It is all planned out and everything already, right? This is ultimate control that's going on here, right? So we need to approach this thing different. And what I'm saying, this whole thing has to be a revelation of two things. A revelation of where we went wrong with medicine. Where we went wrong with medicine. And we have to change that. We have to go back to healthcare, right? And get rid of this pharmaceutical business that has no healing potential whatsoever. And the other thing is that we have to fix governance. Because right now, we have no say in what happens, right? A few elected persons have all the say and all the control for all the citizens of the world, and that cannot be right.
Philip Franco, I wanna applaud what you just said, and I wanna say that that's why I said my approach to this remains politics. This is a political issue. Politics has failed us. Governance has failed us. My brother said it earlier that those who have lead on this, those who were responsible for seeing this thing coming and modeling and preparing for it, they took advantage. They misused it for their own agendas, and we will find out, I hope, at some point what was behind this. I'm going to look up a lot of things that Kirk Megu suggested that we follow to get some more information. But we have to come back to this, because what Philip Franco just said in his impassioned plea is that if we don't get ourselves back to having a political voice in the operation of our country, and I'm talking now Trinidad and Tobago, Paul.
I have to say it this way, for what the two gentlemen said quickly, because it's important. Your approach has to be this. Yours as the leader of a political party, and I don't want to get into the politics of Trinidad. I just talking now as a Trinidadian born Tobagonian, born there too. Every Trinidadian need to ask just one question, just one right now. I understand what the gentleman just said. Right now we can deal with all those ills after. Right now we have a more urgent situation. We actually have a virus, like the normal seasonal influenza that it would normally be captured in those numbers. The issue is this respiratory virus targets compromised people who the demographic age is elderly people with conditions. That is the group that we need to focus on, and you need to ask the government one question always. Today, get somebody to tell you how many elderly people are in Trinidad with and without multiple conditions. Get that number. So if the number is 100,000, then say, how many ventilators do we have? If it is really 16, well, then Trinidad is in a lot of trouble should this catch fire, because all of those 100,000 people are at risk of death. I'll be as blunt as I can, because this particular virus attacks a particular cell in the lung, the T2 pneumocyte cells that produces the surfactant in your lung. Eventually, with the inflammatory response, the lungs get filled with water and you drown on yourself. That is the reason for putting you on ventilation, because you cannot do the gas exchange anymore at the level of the lung cells. You need to be on the ventilator whilst your body deals with it. You cannot. The gentleman just asked, I would like to know if people get into a severe or critical condition, what is the recovery rate? If you get into severe or critical with this particular virus and you go into respiratory distress, if you are not on a mechanical ventilator, you will 100% die. You need to be on the ventilator.
And we said that from the start.
Answer everybody a simple question.
156,000 people above the age of 60, 12% of the population, according to the Central Statistical Office.
Well, 60 is not the age we're looking at. The age is older than that. So you're going like 75 and above. So I'm telling you.
Well, you can extrapolate. You can extrapolate because we have 20,000 children every year at the age of 11. So you could say that 20,000 is the number per age. So you could tell yourself, working backwards from there, every 10 from that, you could say that we're looking at about 100,000 people. You're correct.
Get a demographer. Get a demographer quickly to get that information in your hands. If you're a political leader, Philip, and tell the government simply, we have 100,000 people at risk. You don't need to be the Minister of Health. You could say it with a shot. If it's 100,000 people over 75, assume that they have underlying medical conditions because they're elderly. Tell the minister there are 100,000 Trinidadian Tobagonians are a theoretical risk of death with this. I know there are 16 ventilators. We need at least 100 ventilators per person. No, I mean 1 ventilator per 100 people available. Do the math. That's the number of ventilators Trinidad needs to have. Because it may turn out that many of them may not get it, which is happening in many countries. But it may turn out that many of them do. And you want the ventilators. I say again, if an elderly person with an underlying medical condition gets this infection and they progress to the severe form of respiratory distress, they must be in an emergency room on a mechanical ventilator. They will die without it because you drown. It's that simple. And that is what Trump got to find out. Somebody whispered to him. That is what Trudeau got to find out. I don't know yet if the Prime Minister knows this. That is where the money needs to be. Ventilators, and the support staff. You need to get all the equipment to run them, and you need to get the support staff properly trained and supported. Because often the healthcare workers are often overlooked, and they are the most important person in this equation to provide support to them, the emotional support, the financial support, and all the support. But those ventilators are the key. Listen to the news 24/7 in America. Every time Trump speaks, the talk goes back to ventilators. He has issued an executive order to companies now like Ford and GM. No more cars they're making. You didn't know that. Put all the tools down. You're making ventilators.
But it should have been.
Why?
No, but that should have been the order from the start, and you're correct. Where we're heading now with this conversation is where the conversation needs to go. We are ahead of the curve. This is the tip of the spear to turn this thing around. There needs to be a conversation where everybody now understands what we're dealing with. We need to know that there is a specific group of people that are at risk here so that we could protect that group of people and start back up Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the world, but I could only deal with Trinidad and Tobago for now. And we need to start Trinidad and Tobago back up because this escalating state of emergency bullshit is going to destroy the economy, destroy the democracy while we're fighting a virus that doesn't need this overcorrection. I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to make their closing comments. Paul, we could start with you.
You need to say some prayers for Trump because right now he's the president. And I kind of think in some ways he's doing a very good job, to be honest with you. Given what they're dealing with there. They're dealing with some very tough situation. You need to pray. America gets to make the right decision. And I am an epidemiologist, but I am speaking as somebody living in a society too. I think what has happened, what they've done is wrong. That's my view. I think there are many other ways they could have done this. And if they got the messaging right up front, school the public and tell them it is a particular group at risk. We need to protect them. You have to take precautions yourself, but go on with life. But we protect those people. You get a vaccine program, you try to get a vaccine, you try to get therapeutics to find the right drug that could treat it. And all those things together, along with the herd immunity, we're going to pull it down. However, if America fails, if American economy fails,
there's a different kind of catastrophe that will destroy Trinidad and Tobago. No, but again, we talking to Trinidadians and Tobagonians, and what you said, I need for them to hear. Paul Bloomberg just put out the food numbers, the actual factual food production and shipping numbers for the next 30 days. The world needs to wake up to the bullshit that is going on, because right now we are lowering the production of food stocks. We are lucky that the oil price caused us a drop in the demand for biofuels, and that redirected sugar and corn. So that is buffering. I just saying that food, producing food, shipping food, this is critical.
You'll be fine. Everybody on your panel, barring if anybody have grave illnesses, they'll be fine. Everybody we know, except the elderly people we know, if they have grave illnesses.
We're going to come back to this conversation, Paul. We're going to bring it back.
Everybody will be fine, Philip. I know what to tell you. They made more out of this.
Paul, we're gonna do more of these panels, and I really appreciate, to those of you who joined late, I see Adrian Charles thinking that this is just an opportunity for Paul. What we had here was Paul Alexander, PhD epidemiologist, and he's been giving us some guidelines. Kirk Megu, Dr. Kirk Megu, political scientist. Kirk, closing comments, please.
Yeah, I agree with what Paul is saying. We must not let fear grip us. We always make bad decisions in fear, right? So we must not let this grip us. We are going to survive this. As Paul said, it is a small group of elderly people that we have to aggressively protect in the exact way he said. Find out the number, then take the proportion, make sure we have ventilators for them. Because I was just checking the New York City figures, for example, and of the 932 deaths in New York City, only 14 did not have underlying conditions. So in other words, wow, 918 people already had underlying conditions. Right? So those are the vulnerable people. Not everybody. We don't have to shut down everything and take away our rights and destroy our economy and have this wealth inequality and all. We don't need to go to that level. We need to protect our elderly population aggressively, make sure we have those ventilators there, and we need to have the strength of mind to continue our economy, to grow food, to use whatever opportunity this has to strengthen our economy, our politics. And we also need the politics part of this is that we need to be able to work together in this crisis, and instead of using it as an opportunity for one-upmanship and arrogance, because from the time it was brought up on January 31st, it was arrogance that led us not to look at these things, right? We must shed ourselves of that and have the well-being of the population first and foremost in mind.
Also that, Dr. Kirk. Philip Franco, neuropathic doctor, your closing comments.
Yes, Philip and viewers. It's surprising to note that many people think they're not going to get it, or they're going to isolate themselves away from this virus, this highly contagious virus. And I tell people every day, I say, when you get it, and I explain to them what you need to do and so forth. Because I don't think we're going to be able to stop it. It's out. It's like influenza A and B, and it's going to be there. We're going to get it. Some of us will build immunity to it and our antibodies if we are healthy, right? And it's going to come around again season after season like the rest of them. Right? It's going to have a mortality rate every year and every season as it goes, right? So we're going to get it. What we have to do is understand these things. Nobody has said that from the ministry, right? There's lack of proper information, right? People, people, if they get it, fear alone will kill them because they think they're going to die, right? So people have to understand that we may all get it, but it may not be bad. And I agree with Philip and Kirk that we need to really hone in on the elderly and the predisposed persons who have lung disease and so forth, because they are young people and people with allergies and various lung ailments that are going to suffer because of it. But we have to have an intervention that is early. It cannot be an intervention when you get severe symptoms, then call back and we'll come and get you, or come to the emergency or wherever they want you to come. That is ludicrous. That is inappropriate. That is inadequate. We need to treat early on. What is the treatment? I don't know what the treatment is. I was trying to find out from the health ministry, what is the treatment? They haven't spelled it out. They say, oh, give Tylenol and oh, the ibuprofen is all right. Because they went to ask the WHO if in fact the ibuprofen is contraindicated. The WHO said that they asked the drug manufacturer if anything is wrong with the ibuprofen. Guess what the drug manufacturer said? They said, no, they have no evidence that anything is wrong with it. And the WHO said, continue to use it because as far as we know, it's safe. This is crazy, right? We know there are research and studies done way back. I'm looking at them for decades ago, that all anti-inflammatories reduce our immune response and our ability to fight infection. We have to learn, people have to learn how to manage a fever, how to manage an infectious disease, right? And these elderly people are on anti-inflammatories day in and day out, taking it like candy. So it is not just because they're elderly, but they're elderly predisposed because they have illnesses, but they are also taking things that depress and suppress the immune response. So we have to look at this in a much different way than we are doing now, because we're not doing a good job. Big Pharma is in control, but the secure system leaves a lot to be desired.
Well, a lot of information. I mean, I want to say though, I take great solace that it is men like you that I am in this front line with, trying to wake Trinidadians up to the misinformation that is surrounding this coronavirus. We need to evangelize one to the other quickly and get people awake and understanding what exactly is going on. That the mad panic and the fear mongering is doing a lot of damage to the country. That the government's reaction to it is an overcorrection or underhandling. We are making an absolute mess of the society, the democracy, and the economy, and we can't continue that way. That we understand now, and the numbers are very clear. We understand now that there are specific conditions under which you can succumb to coronavirus. Otherwise, you will get coronavirus like you get every other flu and virus, and it will pass through your system and go away. This needs to fix. We need to change this. So we are going to have to work at this 24 hours a day. We have to work harder than the fearmongers. We are going to be fighting Al Jazeera and BBC and CNN on a 24-hour news cycle, pushing this nonsense that the whole world going to drop dead in the street. Paul?
I have to go. I want to end by telling you something here. I'm talking now pure data and epidemiology. Looking at all the models across the world and everything. I am going to guarantee you in this statement, when it's over, in the United States, Canada, every first world country, the mortality rate will be aggressively downgraded. It might end up to be about 0.3. Not what was put out in the beginning of 3.4. Every mortality rate in all of the other major pandemics, swine flu, everyone had to be downgraded 50, 60, near 100 times over. It's the most incredible thing. When they do this, they need to understand, when they come out of the box, they are always told in the medical profession to stop. Don't do it. don't give the mortality rate, because first of all, you need to preface it by saying this is a crude mortality rate. But by saying the word crude, you are telling me that the denominator in that rate does not include the people who have escaped testing, who have gotten illness, they recovered, they had such mild subclinical illness, it was no problem for them. They have tens of millions of people like that in the world. They're not in that equation. When that equation is adjusted months, a year from now, you'll be shocked and you will come to realize that a lot of this was overblown. Now again, we spoke about the elderly with pre-existing conditions. Those among us who have immune conditions, newborn babies with a suboptimal immune system. These are the high-risk groups. It's a respiratory condition. If you get the breathing difficulties that this can give to old people, it can give this to old people because you as a young person, your lungs are strong. Your respiratory system will run through this virus. That's why I said everybody will be fine. But the elderly amongst us, the respiratory system is sluggish. It doesn't work like a young person, but that's okay. But when they run into a problem with this virus, they need to be put on a ventilator. That's the time. They can wait a couple of days. I'm not talking about they can wait an hour. They need a ventilator in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. They need to be in that hospital with a ventilator waiting for them. That is a discussion only. Mr. Minister, we need to know if we have 100,000 people of this age group in this country, how many ventilators do we have? We need at least 1 ventilator per 100 people. That means you need 1,000 ventilators in Trinidad. And you need to find that money, Mr. Minister, and tell us who's making it for you. When it arrives here next week from Bego, we want it to always break it down. See the whole other corruption. If you tell him like that, tell us who's giving you. United States, call Mr. Trump. He's a good man. Tell him send us some ventilators. I leave.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Paul Alexander, Doctor Epidemiologist. Thanks a lot, Dr. Kirk Megu, Political Science. Thanks a lot. Philip Franco, do I use the title doctor on you as well? You're a neuropathic doctor.
That's fine. Philip is good.
No, but you know what? I want to thank all of you, gentlemen. I want to thank you very, 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 very much for being courageous and brave to stand. Again, it is the test of a man to stand against the tide of ignorance. And it is few that seem to have that backbone in this country. I understand Akash Samaru this morning was functioning as a journalist for the first time and has put the country. I'm going to go and watch that video now. But there are people, I'm watching people on my news feed rooting for the people that are routinely telling this nation lies. And I wonder if we will ever leave the plantation, if we will ever stop trying to be Massa Nice Child. We need to fix Trinidad and Tobago in our hearts and in our minds. And until we free ourselves from this mental block that has us trapped in follow the leader foolishness, we're not going to get anywhere. Gentlemen, thank you all very much. I am going to be troubling your souls again during this week here as we get more guests to come to the conversation. Trinidadians have to wake up to what the facts and the reality is so we can make better decisions. Yeah? Thanks very, very much, guys. Yeah?
All
so
right.
thanking Satish Ramsaran, Pep Media, and Master Control. Thanks a lot for that. We're going to bring this to a wrap. This particular show, share the show, copy it, copy the data. I don't even need the credit. Get the data out there. CNC3, you're using my videos to broadcast. Use this too. Share the information. Everybody get it out there. The government is making an absolute mess of this. We have to fix it. We have to rescue the country. We cannot lose the democracy and the economy overcorrected and mismanaging a situation that could be dealt with scientifically. And we need to put science back into the conversation and get sense back into our politics. And we could do that. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.